right? We are now officially in Q4. Q4 is now. So if you didn't know that, welcome to Q4. And guys, when it comes to planning our Q4 strategies, there are so many things that we actually really have to keep in mind. Just so you guys know, we are going to be hosting kind of a little bit of a small group session shortly after this. So if you guys do want to sign up for the small group class, please feel free to head over to Embark Live and make sure that you sign up, because we got so much to go over, and Q4 is not easy. So most of the time, guys, Q4 strategies are being built out, much further in advance, right? Because obviously you're looking at your product release schedules. You are looking at implementing your marketing schedules. So if you guys haven't already looked into what you're doing for the holiday season, this is a really important conversation, and I hope you guys are able to take some copious notes. So let's dive in and kind of talk a little bit more about what Q4 should look like. Now, as you guys may have been hearing, e-commerce is actually set to be about, I think it's like 1% to 2% higher than last year's e-commerce sales, which is honestly, I think, pretty incredible given the state of our economy and how things have been shifting. So if you guys are wondering, are we planning on having a robust Q4? We absolutely are. Costing and how you're going to be spending on the digital side is going to be a lot more expensive than what it used to look like before, right? So Grit and Grace, your question is, are you working with specific rework of Q4 math? We can talk a little bit about reforecasting. And kind of how to be looking at reforecasting given your existing run rate. However, this conversation is primarily going to be focused on what kinds of marketing strategies and how you should be preparing from a promotional and markdown cadence. Almost all of you guys, if you don't yet have product that you've already been designing, right, or that's already in production, that's already ready to go, I would say by no later than November 15th. You're basically going to be missing the boat on holiday. So right now, when we're starting to think about what is it that you can actually be achieving, we want to be looking at what are your existing inventory numbers looking like. So what do you have in stock? What are you planning on releasing for Q4? And then kind of looking beyond what you're releasing, we then want to look at how are you looking at your promotional and merchandising and marketing cadences. So let's start to break all of this down. Now, the month of October, if you haven't yet already, you should be planning on having more than one channel of marketing. Now, traditionally during Q4, guys, we're used to seeing pop-up shops. We're used to seeing so many fairs and bazaars and different ways of being able to engage. However, right, unlike any other time period, we're going to be unable to do that. Now, there are some pop-up shops like West Coast Craft and some others and Renegade that I know are looking at different ways of doing pop-ups. Pop-ups remain to be, I would say, a safer channel than obviously, having a holiday shopping event or a trunk show. But these are traditional channels that everyone used to look at, right? How do we actually, collaborate with a retailer and get our products at a trunk show? Now, there are no real trunk shows, right? Everything has to be socially distant, and we're looking at new ways in getting in front of customers. So the first thing I would say, guys, is definitely take a research and look at, are there any pop-ups or are there any kind of outdoor fairs that are going to be activating and doing things that are COVID friendly for the holiday, right? You're going to definitely want to get on top of that radar and participate if you can. Now, certainly priority is being given to brands who already have a relationship with those organizations. However, I do think it's definitely worthwhile for us to plan out and research locally for you. So don't fly with your merch, but locally for you, are there ways in which you can actually do that kind of an outdoor market kind of strategy. Now, the next component that's going to be important to look at is really what's your digital spend looking like? Knowing that the holiday time period is one of the most aggressive time periods for sales and for spend really consistently year over year. My strategy with all of our clients is to basically be looking at business in two capacities. One is in those off holiday months, right? You guys really should be building up your marketing cadence and building up your funnels. And the reason why that's so important is during the holiday time period, the strategy is to be remarketing. right? It's retargeting. It's going to be using your lookalike audiences to be able to build and get in front of a larger audience that's going to be warmer to your product. Now, the reason why that's important to do and to activate during the other 9 months of the year is because it's much cheaper. Your acquisition costs are much cheaper when you're actually selling to groups of people who already know your business and brand. And those lookalike audiences are also going to be a lot cheaper than new customer acquisition cost for someone who doesn't know you, who you're trying to figure out that demographic. So if you've done the thing I would advise you to do starting in January, which is start advertising, right? Yearly budgets, monthly budgets, continuously advertising. Then by the time this Q4 rolls around, you already have your lookalike audiences, you have your retargeted groups, and you're not going to be spending so much in terms of new brand customer acquisition. Now, if you find yourself in the bucket where maybe you have not been doing advertising during the year and you've saved your pennies and now you're saying, okay, well, I really want to go after a digital strategy right now, what do I do? Well, you want to make sure you're creating some really nice cohesive funnels, right? And you want to make sure you're not just using Facebook and Instagram. I have to tell you, Facebook and Instagram is simply one channel, right? There are brands right now that are doing really successful looking on platforms like TikTok, looking at platforms like obviously Snapchat, I think, is another important opportunity for you to be, exploring depending on your target demographic. Certainly Pinterest. I've seen a lot of high performance on Pinterest for home goods. I think home goods and accessories, I think, are really good for Pinterest. And then obviously not just on those social channels, but you guys should also be looking at programmatic. So what is programmatic? Well, programmatic is essentially when you go on, let's say, I don't know, Refinery 29, right? You will take a look at Refinery 29. And yes, Syama, Periscope is a good one. So of course, let's not forget that. And so when you're looking at what your programmatic should look like, let's kind of break down what that process is. So typically on any of the outlets you guys are interested in, let's say, doing a media buy on, right? So let's say, for example, you're looking at Refinery 29. Well, there are a couple different ways that you can engage with a media outlet like that, right? So the first channel that you can kind of engage with a media outlet like that is to say, hey, I want to do a straight media buy with you, which means I want to be able to buy that banner space, right? Or I want to go in and do some advertising on their newsletter. Then what'll happen is they take that extra ad space that hasn't yet been sold and it now goes on to an auction. And so when you're taking a look at the auction side of it, that basically it's basically brokering the ads. So when you're talking about transactions on that, that's going to be your programmatic advertising. I think it's a really fantastic strategy to do in tandem with something like a Pinterest /Instagram/Facebook campaign, because you guys, it's not just about honing in on one channel. It's about really kind of getting onto multiple platforms. And these things are not too late, right? These are things you can do now, right? So do them. The next component that I think is really exciting is to think about some potential direct mailers, right? And when I say direct mailers, I don't mean setting out a catalog right now. Obviously, that's quite expensive. But there are some fantastic things you guys can do in terms of getting, let's say, retargeted direct mail, right? So someone buys something off your site, they put something on the cart. Let's say they don't actually add to cart. They add to cart, they don't actually check out. And then what happens is it triggers something in another system and they send out a piece of direct mail in addition to your abandoned cart email in order to close the acquisition cost, in order to close the sale. And so what's important with that is when it comes to these kinds of direct mail components, you really want to make sure that you're incentivizing with some good coupons, right? So if you don't have good margins kind of baked into that, probably not a good strategy for you. Okay, let me take a look at this question here. I need help in developing target market research, creating my avatar. Can you help with creating a report on this? Okay, so here's the thing that I have a bit of an issue with when it comes to like creating target market avatars is that like it's so old school, you know? Like, I mean, we certainly do that when we're working with brands and we need to develop like the archetype, but the archetype of what you're pulling together isn't really what you think it is. It's a little bit different. And I want to touch on that in a bit more detail. When it comes to pulling together kind of who you want your customer to be, it is not really about like, you know, this is her age or his age, this is what they do for work. A lot of it has to do with purchasing behavior, right? A lot of it has to do with how you're looking at their psychographic information. A lot of it has to do with what are their struggles and what are their pain points, right? Who is this customer and what is it that they are striving for? Like, what are the solutions that they are looking for in their lives? And how is your product going to really help support these solutions, right? So when you're asking me about, can you help me create a report with a, you know, kind of customer avatar, right? My question really comes down to, well, how much, you know, do we actually have access to those customers? Can we actually have conversations with these people? Can we actually run maybe some focus groups, right? Or start to do maybe some jobs to be done, you know, phone calls with them, right? To really understand what are those struggling moments. Because what's fascinating here is your customer is likely going to be more rooted in a struggle than they are going to be in an age. And it is, yes, I do offer that. so yes, Grit and Grace, we do help with that. I do help with that. And so what I find to be really important, guys, is when you're launching a new product or a new brand, you really want to be keeping in mind, not just, you know, here's who I want my customer to be, but really the biggest question here is what are their pain points and struggles, and how are you as a brand satisfying that? And I don't mean struggles in terms of does the t-shirt fit or not. I mean struggles in terms of what kind of social connection, right, is, you know, what kind of social connection or payoff is going to happen when a brand gets interacted with by a customer, right? When someone ends up saying something like, you know, hey, I want to sell black t-shirts, right? The question should really be, what kind of messaging is going to make someone more attracted to buying your black t-shirt than someone else's? And let me tell you, price points are emotional, right? They're not just the cost of goods. They're actually someone socially indexing themselves against your brand. They're saying, hey, I can spend $500 on a t-shirt, and so I will. And so that's going to say something to me. And all of a sudden now I'm part of this like exclusive group of people who can buy these types of t-shirts. So there are these emotional, social, functional jobs that brands do. A lot of this theory is all taken from the Jobs to Be Done theory that was developed by Bob Mesta and Clay Christensen. Really exciting and interesting stuff, guys, in terms of how we can start to look at brands, how we can start to look at product development, and ultimately understanding the customer. In fact, there's an amazing book that just launched, I want to say maybe a week ago at this point, called Demand Side Sales. And what I think is fascinating about this demand side sales process is it basically asks you to take a look at your customer through the lens, right, of their struggles, rather than through the lens of the product it is that you're trying to sell to them. You know, what's interesting, Grit and Grace, is you were saying, you know, that you know, are struggling to get in front of your customer to understand who they are because you're too close to it. And that is precisely correct. And I would say the majority of brand owners are too committed to the aesthetic direction and the product than they are to the customer. So if all of us went around building brands, right, for the customer rather than for ourselves, right, what kind of companies would we end up with, right? We would probably end up with business models that were a lot more lean, that were a lot more profitable, and that had a lot higher success rate, because when you're building a business model off of a customer and off of a struggle rather than what you think, right? All of a sudden, now you have the opportunity to truly build something powerful and to make an impact. And that philosophy is not just in, that philosophy has really primarily been executed through SaaS products, right? So software products and different kinds of companies have, let's say like mass consumer good products, have really been pioneering this theory. We haven't really seen a lot of it in fashion. And in fact, guys, I posted something on my LinkedIn the other day that was, very much around the notion of, how would it look like, right? What would it look like if we actually started to rethink our industry sense of demand side development and communication, right? It kind of goes both ways. So, I think that is, I think those are very important topics. I mean, obviously that's a lot to do for Q4. So kind of circling back to our primary topic here, which is how do you plan for Q4? Well, obviously, let me just refresh this. We have to be launching communication strategies and advertising strategies on multiple platforms. Super duper important. Pick 3, pick 4. You need to be places. Right? If you are not where your customer is, you're not going to sell anything. Ramp up your newsletter cadence, ramp up your social media. It's time to go big, right? If you were waiting the last 6 months and you were wondering what's happening in this industry, am I in the right industry? How do I need to pivot? What do I need to do? Let's say you cut back on a lot of spending. Maybe you got the EIDL loan. This is the moment to use it. This is the moment to execute. So if you are concerned about the industry, if you are concerned about sales, let me tell you, this Q4 is going to be important for you to engage in. So make sure you take some time to build out those marketing channels. Make sure that you have the right creative assets. If you have an existing customer base and you're wondering how on earth do I get in front of that customer base in a way that's more conversion oriented, I am still working with clients right now on implementing jobs to be done innovation phone calls and really starting to hone in on your particular customer struggles and demographic issues. And I think that could be something that would be very interesting for all of you who have an existing customer base who's wondering, how do I position this copy and kind of get the right conversion-oriented copy ready for the season? Because you still have a little bit more time to be able to pull that together. So it's not just about ads, it's about the right kinds of ads. It's about having the right assets, photography, and copy. So if you are lagging on this, if you haven't started putting together your promotional calendar, here are a couple key dates that you're going to want to keep in mind. When we are thinking about, how we are looking at key promotional dates, well, if Black Friday's on a Friday, right, maybe you should be breaking sale earlier. Right? I mean, maybe you want to get in front of people before they, get bombarded with all their Black Friday emails. So really think about getting ahead of the curve. It kind of reminds me of like back in 2008 when the last big crash happened and we were all, wondering what was going to happen with sales and and, Saks broke first and then it was Barney's and everyone was like, oh my God, it's sales. Well, that kind of is what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, right? It's like everyone kind of broke sale and liquidated. Unfortunately, you have a lot of businesses that went under. But I would say if you do have a loss leader, or you do have a product, or you are pushing something, a theme, a concept, promotional items, and you really want to take advantage of Black Friday, I'd say start your promotions a little bit earlier, right? Nothing wrong with that. Cyber Monday is also going to be a big one. So if you're looking at Cyber Monday and you're wondering, how am I going to compete with Cyber Monday? Make sure that you're either saying, hey, I'm not going to compete at all, which is totally possible, right? So let me also preface this with, you don't have to be on markdowns or discounts in order to be in business, right? That's not necessary. What is necessary, though, is that you have a strategy and approach to that. So if you know that you're going to be strategically opting out of any of these major, promotional holiday periods, do so with intention, right? Do so knowing that that is what you're up to. So I think that's really important, right? I think that's going to really, it's going to help you a lot to go into it knowing yes or no pretty definitively. Okay, so then we move on, right? So we have your Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then we start moving into holiday, right? We start moving into that December time period. Now, what you want to do during December is totally up to you. Personally, I think customers are looking for newness more than they're looking for markdowns. I think we've seen so many markdowns over the summer. I think we've just been markdowned out. And honestly, I think a great strategy, right, to be able to kind of get in front of your customer is going to be through some kind of newness. So if you do have newness, if you are able to, do free shipping, if you are able to broker good contracts and like within your margins to be able to facilitate that, please do that. All of that, I think, is going to really help you tremendously in the long run. But, at the end of the day, I think that, we've got 3 months to really blow it out of the park, as the industry is shifting and changing, right? As we're kind of looking at different business models, different inventory models, we have to ask ourselves, how are we preparing ourselves for 2021? And while Q4 is going to be heavily invested in marketing, heavily invested in so many other areas of operations and logistics. Remember, USPS is not doing so well these days. So if you are, if you're hoping on banking on USPS to carry your packages through, you may need to look at some other shipping carriers and options because we're seeing what's going on. Also for Q4, guys, let's not forget we are amidst a very contentious election. Depending on your personal, political beliefs, how you're planning on supporting this election, very important to either say something, which is really what brands are looking for, say something, customers are looking for that, or you need to address it, I would say, in some capacity. It's simply not going to be okay for any, I would say not okay at all for any of your customers if you guys do not kind of strategically plan, right? Meaning you're not strategically saying something about the election, right? It's like what we've been seeing over and over and over again. If you don't say something, you come off as being tone deaf, right? So you need to say something. And so you need to figure out what the hell you're going to say, basically. So what the hell are you going to say, right? How are you going to position it, right? How do you encourage people to get out and vote? How are you using your social media, your newsletter to be able to espouse, at the very least, agency, sovereignty, and ownership over one's vote, right? These are very important times. Regardless of what you believe in or who you believe in, it is important to exercise our sovereignty and to do something, right? Super important. So as brands, I'd like to very much encourage you to take a stance on voting. If you're an international brand and you're wondering, well, how do I get involved or what does that mean? I'd say take a look at who your audience is, right? Take a look at your website traffic, who's coming to your site. The majority of people coming to your site are from Spain, and no one from the US is coming to your site, or a small number of people, then hey, maybe you don't need to be as active on these topics, right? But if you are leveraging and selling to the US market, super important to stay really relevant and current. All right. Hey, Syama, you mentioned free shipping as a strategy. Should we offer satisfaction guarantees as well? What's the best number of days to offer? 30, 60, 90 days for apparel? Yeah, I think 45 days is great. But remember that, you want to make sure, so free shipping is a strategy. Free shipping is a great strategy for things like, leading up to Christmas, let's say, for example. You want to make sure the product gets there before the 25th, offer free shipping, free expedited shipping, right? Over a certain threshold. Hey, we will get you your gifts on time. Everyone's afraid of not getting their stuff, right? Why? Because USPS is not doing well, right? We all know that, right? It doesn't take a genius to know that. So if you are going to do shipping strategies, please make sure that you pick a good company, that you broker some good rates, and you can actually afford it on your gross margin, right? You need to have profitability built into that. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, right? Nothing is more sexy than making money, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So very, very important to keep that bottom line. When it comes to satisfaction guarantees, I'd say 30 days, 45 days is great. Again, keep in mind that if you are going to offer someone a certain threshold of being able to return a garment to you, make sure that they know the tags have to still be on it, right? Make sure that they know, what the reasoning is behind it. And gosh, make sure that you can stand behind that, because not a lot of people are going to use it, meaning most people will actually not return the garment. So it's a pain in the ass unless you offer like a free pickup, which no brands really do that. So I would say from that perspective, offer 45 days, offer 30 days. Maybe they can return it with a store credit, right? Or a free exchange, which I think is also perfectly fine. But remember, as a small brand, you really need to be protecting your margins, right? A lot of this is like, and you don't have a lot of money, right? A lot of resources to be losing here. All right, guys. So that is it for me on Q4. I got some very lively comments here over on Periscope, and thank you guys who've been commenting on from YouTube and from Instagram. It's always really a pleasure to get to see you guys. And JB, awesome. You are wonderful. It'd be wonderful to FaceTime chat with you sometime and talk about your business. It's nice to see some regulars here. And those of you guys who are interested in joining me for a bit more kind of in-depth, one-on-one, small group stuff. We are continuing to do that as well with Embark Live. So today we have another one coming up, and we will be continuing to do those going forward until I say so. So, oh, you got your ticket. Oh, amazing. Super. Well, we will be hanging out in about 30 minutes. And it means I got to get some coffee because I think it's going to be a lively one. I think it's going to be pretty fun. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, you can find me on Embark Live. My name is Syama Maher. I am the CEO and founder of Scaling Retail. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.